Hello, good afternoon. It is Friday and it's the 28th of January 2022 and I've had a little break and I am continuing to read out of Lydia. Lydia is a story about reincarnation, in fact more than one reincarnation, and it is a follow-on from my first book I wrote in 2006 entitled Bliss After Life. It was a story, really, which I finished in 2017, and I read that already as well. And I am now continuing. I'm actually at chapter 48, and they had a little meeting at the refuge with Holly and with Evelyn and Melanie. Mio had just channeled some information through Melanie. I write it down. Holly handed her a pen and pad. She wrote down all the things Mio recounted patiently and calmly. There was a list of 20 things. She breathed deeply and looked at Melanie. Please follow all the things that I asked you to check. Split the list and meet here again in 2 weeks to discuss what you found. Melanie will be here at the refuge and we will discuss. I would appreciate if you gave her a list of the things I just gave you. Give her a copy. Also give her a couple of things to check. The last points in particular, please. Thank you and goodbye. We appreciate your focused attention. Melanie shook her head and looked at both. She had to laugh. Goodness, did we shock you? She said. She had to burst out laughing because Evelyn was still finishing the last words on the list and looked up hurriedly at Melanie. Got it all, she shouted, and all fell about laughing. This was just too unreal. They could not stop laughing, but eventually Melanie insisted to see what Evelyn had furiously written down. 20 bullet points. No doubt she was organized. Wow, you have it all here, starting with the World Health Organization? Why? Melanie was running her eyes along the list, and each point gave her a feeling. Could you copy this for me, please, Holly? Of course. I have a printer, I have, you know. And Mio said anyway to do that. Holly was so glad she had bought the combi printer. She could even send faxes and everything, although she could not remember the last time the fax was actually used. Her scanner was great, and she was proud of her home office. Thank you, I shall myself research. Shall we split the list? I take the first 5. Sounds good to me. I'm already intrigued. Who owns the media? What sort of a question is that? Anyhow, okay, I take the first 9. 1 to 9, okay? Yes, okay. I take the 10 to 18. Yeah, GMO? Well, I know a little about that. Okay, let us start. 19 and 20 are for Melanie. First, can we please just have a chat? Mio is quite a taskmaster. All laughed and Holly got up to get a bottle of Prosecco out of the fridge. She had stored for such a moment. Well, any great moment, she thought, but who knew there would be such a moment? She smiled to herself, fetching glasses out of the top cupboard, the crystal ones. Evelyn looked at her and smiled. Somehow all felt excited and a little uneasy. The questions were most intriguing. Who owns the Federal Bank of America? Evelyn took the bottle out of Holly's hand and opened it, pouring the moment the cork popped. There's a reason these questions are needing our attention. You do feel that, right? Holly looked at both Melanie and Evelyn. They all knew this was important, and Evelyn had already started to separate the list into their individual tasks. She would work with Mark on these. He would know a lot of them. He was quite political. Melanie, checking for alien visitations, number 19. Holly was looking at Melanie, wide-eyed. This was a little creepy, and they sat down in ominous silence. It's no good looking at me like that, Melanie burst out laughing, and they all had to join in because Melanie had been talking to them Melanie had been talking to them most of her life, and Holly had written a book about a story of aliens. They could not stop laughing because Evelyn had had her own strange experiences with Bliss, and help from outside or above had come up a lot in her conversations with Bliss. Michael was less inclined, but he was quite au fait with politics, and they felt years ago already that there must be assistance. Now they suddenly had proof, and what were they going to do with it? They all felt elated and did not even know why, but something big was going on right now. 2012, Holly explained. I mean, you'd have to live under a rock if the talk of the shift, etc., has not come to your ears. Melanie was spluttering. The three women sat down at the kitchen table. Let's take a breath. Melanie could feel Mio quite close, and she had a feeling there was laughter on the other side. She could feel the energies of Mio and calmed down. Holly got up and put the kettle on, thinking about the last few days. Evelyn sat and smiled. I can almost feel Bliss here. She suddenly had to stop as tears were streaming. She was surprised herself because she suddenly felt much calmer. Holly came over and sat next to her. They embraced. Holly's eyes were streaming with tears, and Melanie felt herself crying as well, but a feeling of kinship overcame them. She sometimes forgot how lovely her parents had been, easygoing and probably labelled as hippies nowadays. Her sometimes strange behaviour was taken in their stride. When they died so unexpectedly, it was only Mio she felt she could talk to, because this kind of loss in teenagehood shakes the system. She had years of communication. Many of her old friends subscribed to either an overactive imagination, or a psychologist friend suggested it was her higher self. But she had not met anyone, only read about such things. Her life was okay, but since she had met Tony, she had felt such companionship that she now understood what Mio had said about being honest to oneself, sharing the deepest emotions and co-creating a future. She had been able to talk to Tony because Bliss had well prepared him, and Holly was so easy with this subject. That she was an author of a novel herself was more than synchronistic, considering the subject matter. Well, something is going on, that's for sure. Holly got back up and to make the tea. She put a mug in front of each of them and sat down again. Melanie held her belly. I could just feel a big kick. I almost forgot. How are you doing? You're really starting to show now. Evelyn smiled at her. I wonder what did you say the name was? Milton, Holly and Melanie shouted in unison, and they were laughing again because it was bizarre and magical what was going on in summer 2012. They say 2112 is the date. Melanie looked at them, still laughing. That's less than 6 months away. How much more will happen? Holly felt like smoking a joint. This was all a little overwhelming, and looking at the list again, she had an uneasy feeling. She got up to get her tobacco, and Evelyn nodded, smiling. Melanie got up to meet Tony. She was already a little late, and after hugging both Evelyn and Holly, she left with a feeling of anxious anticipation, and couldn't wait to see Tony, as they could pick it apart over lunch. So, I read until this chapter, and will continue very soon. Have a good Friday.